pure conscience in chapter 3 of 1 Timothy and in chapter 1 of 2 Timothy. Titus chapter 1, verse 15 speaks of people being pure in respect of mind and conscience. And I think that's the respect that Jesus is speaking of it here, in mind and conscience. And when we speak of mind and conscience, I think we'll get into it just a little bit here and just a little bit more here in a little bit. And, you know, we might ask, just speaking of okay, it's the part, I looked this up. It's not my definition of them. And lead us to the last. Sometimes to the end of January. I just can't go on with it. Well, you won't say it. You'll just gradually neglected. I'm going to go out and save souls. Or maybe just in a worldly sense, I'm going to learn a new skill, especially if you're a younger person, and you get sidetracked. But this is, I'm getting down to this point. Something beyond the mind, something beyond the emotions is there. Frank said something about the conscience. And that's what we're getting at, is the conscience. The will. I think the will is behind this. You go to and look up the word will in a concordance. The will, and this again is a definition I picked up somewhere. It's the mental power used to control and to direct your thoughts and actions, or a determination to do something despite difficulties or opposition. And that's kind of the will in a nutshell, as it applies to us and our thinking, our emotions, and the heart. So the will is even deeper than just the thinking. It's deeper than the emotions. Emotions are variable and can change day to day. Some days we can be on an emotional high and some days on a low. But the will is what should be behind that. And over and over, you'll read so a purified will to do things. A will that is in line with who? It's in line with God, right? We need to set our will. It seemed to be getting out of control for it.
Paul said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ. Parallels to our minds parallel.
Yes. And he was doing whose will? The Father's will. Some ideas before you here, and I'm going to skim some of this because a lot of what I just said is what I think goes into this, especially this A part here. The B part on the first page of lesson 7, the irony of Jesus' statement. The heart of man is origin of every evil deed and thought. Mark 7:23 speaks of basically it comes out of the heart of the man. And Jeremiah speaks of the man's heart being deceitful, and the Lord searches man's mind. Well, for it to come from the heart or the will, it's got to be in the mind too. We could look at so many examples of things that man might do that's wrong. Does he typically do these out of just mistakes, or most time do they not typically determined to do these things? Somewhere down the line, they have determined to do them, I think. And it ain't like Flip Wilson said, the devil made me do it. It may be because I chose what the devil put before me, but the devil didn't make me do it. We just read that, or just referred to Mark chapter 7, verses 20 to 23. And what I gather from that is that the heart of the natural man is the origin of evil. What about the heart of the new man, the new creature, or the new creation? Turn, if you would, to Romans chapter 6. And this is most of that chapter, I guess you'd say. But Romans chapter 6, I think, speaks of all of that. It says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. We who died to sin, how shall we any longer live therein? Are ye ignorant that all we who were baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? We were buried, therefore, with him through baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, so we also might walk in newness of life. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, we shall also be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man was crucified with him in the body of sin, that the body of sin might be done away, that so we should no longer be in bondage to sin. For he that hath died is justified from sin. But if we died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Christ, being raised from the dead, dieth no more. Death no more hath dominion over him. For the death that he died unto sin once. But the life that he liveth unto God. Even so reckon ye also yourselves to be dead unto sin, but also unto God in Jesus Christ, but alive unto God in Christ Jesus. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey the lust thereof. Neither present your members unto sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves unto God as alive from the. It needs to be created and renew a right spirit in me. My spirit has been changed. Renew a right spirit. I had a right spirit before. And renew that in me. Is what David is saying. Any comments? Ronald? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You know, one of the things about the will, at least in my mind, when we read what I said there about its mental power used to control and to direct your thoughts and actions or a determination to do something despite difficulty or opposition. When you exercise your will in the proper way, it should be strengthened to do that later and even in different areas, I think. The mastery of self is probably one of the biggest problems we have. above all others, is mastering ourselves. We might try to control other people. We might try to manipulate other people. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that one is Socrates talking about being slaves and Christ.
Yeah. And that's what continues on in chapter 7. Examples are shown here of those that portray the character expected. And again, like I said, these are places where people had a choice. And they made a wrong choice in some of these. Some of them did. You know, we have the negatives and the positives here. Some made good choices and some made poor choices. And we're not going to go over those. If you went through the lesson, you know those, and probably just at a glance, you could name off the circumstances these were all under. And then the next one is preparing to meet our Savior, or the last part of this said, what? For they shall see God. How do we see God? We don't physically with our person of God. But how do we see God? By faith. Where do we find that? Though we don't see, we know these things are there. And how can we look? Every time a scientist digs a little deeper, and I just watched a thing the other day on a channel, and they get to the first evidence of life in the fossil record. The simplest things they can find, and all of a sudden, there's no transitional fossils. about amoebas or plankton or something like that. I'm talking about complex creatures show up all of a sudden. And they put that at millions and millions or billions, whatever years, I don't know the exact date, but the lowest level of fossil evidence shows that. And yet people want to continue with Darwinism as it all evolved. Well, even though it's not there, it still had to be, and they're convinced of that. And they make a choice to reject God and all the evidence that points to God. Okay, just briefly, what does the heart of man represent? Might combine all these things: the mind, the emotions, the intellect, and the will. All of those go together, I believe. And in a sense, it's the whole of man. Okay, and how did the Pharisees fail in giving God their hearts? Okay. They were all about appearance. We're not going to go through the list of those pure. The blessed. Hebrew word for peace, shalom, still used as a greeting to this day. What does shalom mean? Besides just peace. Peace mean in that respect? Compromise. Sometimes they do make the wrong action in doing this. They may do it by inaction. They don't take a stand for something. Stir up. But to a good end. Yeah. Don't compromise truth. That's, yes. In mind in their so-called compromising for peace. You know, it speaks not just situations. And as Frank said, sometimes that means hushing your mouth. Shut up. What was-
A lot of times, people think about the problems and people choose sides. So why don't we just go talk and try to find some down?
Yeah.
A lot of times, in this congregation here, every problem we have is within the position in here. But everybody here speaks to each other. You don't have to think about that. They're just bad and different.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, Frank said that a soft answer turns away wrath. No, you've been a worse problem. One or both of them carry some bruises to go with it too, right? You know, you can turn, if you would, turn to Galatians chapter 5. And when I think of this, I can't help but think of Galatians 5. Oh, yeah. The next part of it, bearing one another's burdens. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. What next? Peace. Long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, meekness, self-control. Against such there is no law. Where do they come from that we just talked about in the other lesson? Not this heart, this heart. Yeah. They come from the heart. And that's the, I guess, part of the next question anyway. Can one make peace if he is not quote, at peace? If you're in turmoil all the time, can you be a peacemaker? Do we have people that are troublemakers around us? I used to work construction, and every job I was ever on, we would have one guy, typically, sometimes more. Most time, one in every crew. If there were multiple crews, I was in the painters union. We'd have at least one on the job, and a lot of times one in every separate crew that loved to stir up trouble. You've got that nearly anywhere. If you've got a group of people working, you're going to have somebody, and they back off. And I know they laugh to themselves about it. And the best thing to do is avoid them. Don't get caught up in their stuff. When you have these, do you notice sometime, if you've been around these situations, do you sometimes have those that are peacemakers? You typically have somebody that is a peacemaker in the group that will try to, if people get stirred up by this guy, they will try to calm these things down. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If it don't coincide with God's will, it's not. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
That situation several years ago, I looked at someone's house, doing out there, street corners, and had a beautiful house. I looked at them, what? What's going on? Your grass is cheap. He said, the sewer line goes, what's going to do? Sewer line, I'm going to take you, I need sewer line. You don't have to pay for it. So my mind is, when I'm thinking, my house is over the side road, you know, the other side. What difference does it make to you with your food and your shop and your boat? You know, I went to all these things, and so I.
I told him. Yeah. Okay. If you would, to Proverbs chapter 16, verse 7. When a man's ways please the Lord, this gets what you're talking about. He maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. When your ways please the Lord. The enemy might not feel that way, in a sense. But if you're right with the Lord, it really don't make any difference, does it? We can have peace with God. We do that by obedience, by being united with God through Christ, and by continuing in it, by maintaining that. But here's some things that I gleaned these from a few different places. But here's some, I call them marks of peacemakers. And most of these have to do with the Beatitudes. The person who's poor in spirit. Typically a peacemaker is meek, And of course, pure in heart. Person that is not self-willed, but God-willed. And therefore is willing, as Frank mentioned earlier, in essence, one of the things Frank said a while ago. And then here on the peacemaker is not an appeaser, doesn't compromise his truth, not necessarily easygoing. Firm is what I think a peacemaker would be. A person